Hey YouTube, welcome back to the console room. I'm Emperor Kuzco here with my co-host Mr. Ishard. After a long absence, we're back today checking out Kaiju number 8, chapter 23. So diving right into our chapter summary. Of course, the battle with Kaiju number 9 has concluded. We see Kafka and Mina having some interesting interactions. Finally she kind of acknowledges his past. From there, Kafka goes to head back to the crew quarters and runs into the vice captain, who's doing some image training post Kaiju number 8 fight. And it's really funny because we can kind of see from this fight that Kafka clearly got lucky. There's even a panel where he's shitting his pants as it is because he's so scared of the vice captain. There's also a really cool little acknowledgement moment from the vice captain of Kafka's ability, which was kind of nice. And it basically just continues to have a conversation, and the big kind of part of this chapter is the last page, the double spread, where we see this crazy, I guess, kind of air force of kaiju coming in to attack the base. So it's once again great art. That last double page spread, fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise because I was not expecting to go into another, basically, I guess, I don't want to say fight or event, but like, damn, now the kaijus are coming to us, you know what I mean, or to the base.
For sure. To be honest, this is probably the only point in this series that I've kind of been worried, I guess, if you will. Because you don't want to, put on the gas too hard in terms of action scenes and sequences and stuff like that. And we just got out of one, and now we're back into one, and we're only 23 chapters in. So I'm just kind of
Well,
how do you keep raising the bar and upping the hype, right? You can't if you go all out at the beginning.
Well, to be fair, we haven't really seen flying kaijus, so that's kind of especially not like you said before, in Armada before. For me personally, I think kind of makes sense for another battle to start. I mean, the previous chapter, it was like we did it, everyone's good, we're relaxing and stuff like that, having a good time. Now, I think with the next pseudo battle arc, if you want to call it, we're gonna see more of the other officers kind of flourish. So that's why I say I don't mind the next battle, because it's it's a little, I don't want to say it's whiplashly, but
it is a little bit, to be honest with you, though.
It is a little bit. Because I'm not going to lie, some of these chapters, it's funny because it is 19 pages, but it feels short for some reason.
Shorter? Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which is kind of, I don't know why with certain mangas it does it, especially with this one. But I agree, he was just practicing and stuff like that, and his acknowledgement, even if it's just 1% of your, ability, which I think is a great just vice captain in general. Now I'm thinking he doesn't, seem like a Snake type character. He's not Levi type of, I want to say he's not Levi, but he does have the look a little bit to him. And I think that was probably intentional when it comes to the Edoris part, because I guess that's kind of the look of maybe what people
like. Badass, a bowl cut in a serious face.
Yeah. So.
For sure. Yeah, admittedly, there's not a heck of a lot going on in this chapter. I mean, I think it's good that, you get to see the interaction between Kafka and Mina, because, they're childhood friends. His whole reason for joining the Defense Force is to get in there, and they were supposed to be a duo, right? But he didn't have the ability until now. So it's kind of nice that they have this little, I don't want to use the word intimate, but it kind of is, right? Because they are old friends, and there's that acknowledgement. So it was kind of good to see. I gotta say, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Other than that, I really don't. I mean, I don't really have anything else to say aside from he, Kafka would have definitely got destroyed by the vice captain if it wasn't for certain abilities he had as the Kaiju number 8, But, and it is kind of scary because man, this guy's just pretty sick, and he doesn't even have a suit on right now, which is kind of funny when you think about it. That he was
so he's going off without the enhancements for sure, and he's still doing crazy slashes and stuff like that. It's also interesting too that he kind of says to himself if I had done this instead of this, he would have been done for, right? So he's still clearly salty about the whole situation, and it'd be interesting to know how differently this scene would have played out if he had known it was Kafka, for example. That would have been, it's would he still be putting in that same effort if there was some sort of hint that had been left behind that it was Kafka or something like that? Would he still be as salty? Kind of things of that nature. How would their relationship have changed if there had been any indication that it was Kafka rather than, just a kaiju kind of thing. I guess, you know what? Maybe we will go with your original idea and let's just jump into 24 then, because we've kind of covered basically everything here, other than, again, that last panel is sick. Like, that's a great double page spread. That's so sick.
Cool.
The art is a really high bar in this series.
And then we could do Kaiju number 8, chapter 24. Before you start off with the recap, I do like the cover. It's pretty nice. Yeah. Well, I'll just describe it as soon as you get there. Basically, the vice captain would like side by side with Kefka, and one has the vice captain has his like knives, and he has his, and then the other guy he has his Kaiju number 8 like hand. You know what I mean?
His fist. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, kind of, and I assume that's like the gates of the base. You know what I mean? Just like visually.
Or their logo or something like that. Like this is a defense force. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Okay, jumping into the chapter summary. So it's kind of still the night after the conversation between the vice captain and Kafka, and he's kind of like on the roof reconciling to himself, and it's kind of funny because you get this like he's just kind of turning around, stretching, getting ready for bed. And we'll come back to the fact that this is a color panel in the middle of a 19-page chapter later, but he's like, nonchalant, and all you see are meteors coming down from the sky, and it's like, oh, this is not good. Honestly, I would argue if he didn't have everything that he had with him, in terms of like, he can transform and be protected, he might have died. So we see these meteors coming down as an assault on the base. The vice captain, who I guess is kind of on watch for the night, gets informed by the operation room, and we see a new Hanju class threat, which are these weird, I want to say like wyvern-looking kaijus. They're kind of weird, right?
I would say wyvern pterodactyl-ish,
Yeah, pterodactyl. That's a good term. Yeah, okay.
Little Dan-looking thing, yeah.
So these particular kaiju are attacking the base. We also, of course, get a little bit more insight into Kafka's knowledge of kaijus, because these are usually non-group based ones. So instantly, by the fact that they're with a group, we know something up. So seeing that, but among the pterodactyl kaijus, if you will, we see another humanoid.
He does say wyvern type kaiju, so you're not wrong.
Does he actually? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. And then in between these wyvern pterodactyl guys, we see another humanoid one who is kind of more reminiscent maybe of Kafka's design than Kaiju number 9 was. And right away he's targeting Vice Captain. So, I couldn't kind of believe that they're gonna go for the head honcho right away, but I kind of like that.
Yeah, it was pretty sick. Overall, like, this chapter was pretty cool. If we're going back from the beginning, it's kind of funny that the vice captain was thinking like, that Kaiju number 8 was very like human compared to, I guess, all the other kaijus, because he had experience before, right? Facing kaiju, and he's saying to himself like, just with one thought that'll probably come back later down the chapter where he said, he was almost human, right?
Yeah, well, I think what's going to be interesting. I mean, we're going to be covering the next chapter, so I don't want to jump into it really. But, like, obviously there's a fight coming, right? And it'll be interesting to see how the vice captain can handle this. Because, obviously, if he can't handle, I guess we'll call this Kaiju number 10. Like, if he can't handle Kaiju number 10, like, if Kafka's going to have to transform, that's going to change the dynamic of, like, what's going on and stuff like that. So, it kind of feels to me like we're maybe building up for the vice captain actually finding out.
Probably, yeah.
That's I guess that's kind of where my head's going, just because he's constantly thinking about it. We're seeing, like, as you mentioned, the cover is them, posed back to back with one another. So clearly there's this, like, kind of like buddy cop sort of influence being thrown out there. So I'm interested to see if, like, we're actually going to see that relationship and / that reveal happen. Not next chapter, but maybe the chapter after or the chapter after that kind of thing, depending on how this whole situation plays out.
Yeah. And we do go back when you mentioned the meteors. Well, we find out they're not meteors. They're the wyverns.
Well, yeah. Sorry, they're the wyverns. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is pretty interesting to have a color page, mid chapter, which is kind of.
I love it though, dude. It's such a nice like change of pace, and it looks great, right?
It does, and I was like, okay, it's kind of surprising. Again, Kaiju No being like a digital series, so to speak, not like physically out there in like a Shonen Weekly and stuff like that. So it's pretty good. At least that's my knowledge to it. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I do like that. It was nice because I wasn't expecting it. It's nice to see like the colored skies and stuff like that, and from it being all black and white. So yeah,
It
for
it
sure.
added to the impact of like
Oh,
the moment, right? Because
I
like
think so because it's like calm for him, but like whoa, the thing
crazy
behind.
behind them, yeah, exactly. So no, it was, and again, it's just unexpected. It's kind of like that last page from, I want to say it was like way back, like what, like chapter 11 or something like that, where it was the last color page. So I kind of like that they're, I guess, inserting these. How would I phrase it? I guess just like kind of, well, I don't want to call it random color pages, but they're very, kind of thought provoking in terms of their positioning and why they're there. And again, I think you're right in the fact that it's digital makes it almost easier to do it, right? Because you've kind of he's got a little bit more time as well with the breaks and stuff like that. So I kind of love that as well. I liked how the color pages are being inserted. It's a little random, but it adds like a nice little flair. And I agreed with you. I think because it's online, or it's digital rather, and he has more time to kind of deal with the chapters and stuff like that, that it allows him a little bit more flexibility to do stuff
Yeah,
like that as an author. So
for sure. And these wyvern types are on like nothing to like kind of shun about because like they decimate like at least like between a couple build or at least a whole building in between.
yeah, well, what's also kind of interesting, I was going to mention that too, is when the operation room is like speaking with the vice captain, right?
Mhm.
It's cool because there's like human, I guess, intelligence, if you will, behind the attack, right? Because like if these were mindless creatures, they wouldn't do like an aerial raid like that, right?
Yep.
You'd one would just kind of come crashing in and doing its own thing, and then that would kind of happen too. Um, it's also really interesting as well because again, we're kind of like getting a deeper look into the variety and the kind of the class and power structures. So we know like we've got like Hanju or Daikaiju and stuff like that. So we're getting more understanding of what's considered a top tier threat versus what isn't.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to this idea that we know there's kind of something more about pulling the strings behind, right? To have all of this diversity and to have all of this kind of stuff going on, it's really interesting, I think.
And that's why I say this is definitely the arc where like or the battle part where we're gonna see a couple of the other like I guess people in the unit kind of shine a little bit.
Yeah, well, they're going to need to, right? And that's
Mhm.
clear kind of from, Kafka's analysis, right? He doesn't like, he's thinking to himself, well, this doesn't make sense because, these are wyvern type kaiju that normally act alone. And I love again that, his knowledge is playing to their advantage, right? Like he's able to contact the vice captain, be like, hey, these things always operate alone. So something's got to be happening for them to show up as a pack, right? And
Yeah.
then next thing you know, it's like foreshadowing, right? There's got to be one super powerful one pulling the strings. And then the big guy who we saw standing on top of one of the wyvern at the end of the last chapter is, ready to take on the vice captain.
It's pretty interesting that the one that he's, when he says target found, the one that we see with the double spread page, he has like kaiju teeth, and then he looks like he has regular teeth behind it. So it's kind of like,
Right?
yeah,
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 well, I was noticing that too. Like in terms of the aesthetic, I feel like this guy's like way more in line with Kafka or Kafka.
yeah.
Like, yeah, he's got a tail, but I mean, in terms of like the teeth and kind of like the horned top and like the very like, I guess, weird jaggedy feet kind of thing, it's very interesting because compared to like Fungus Guy, this is clearly, I guess, more dragon-like, if you
Yeah,
will,
I would say that.
which kind of makes sense, I guess, with the wyverns kind of going on. So there's clearly like a little, I guess, a little bit of a theme building that's going on here, but it's still
And,
nicely balanced with the human side too.
and it's very strange. Not, I don't say strange, but it's like even how the way the chapter ends was like Kaiju number 8, episode 3. Raid on Takichi Kawa Base.
Tachikawa based,
Okawa?
yeah.
Yeah, like episode 3. I'm like, wait, what do you mean episode 3?
Well,
This
it
chapter.
could just be his the author's name for arcs, right? Because sometimes
Ah,
that
good point.
happens too, right? For example, I can't even. Of course, I need to bring something to my mind, and I can't. But as you know, certain authors will name their certain series like they'll give a chapter name, and everyone will be like following on that. For example, like if it's a music one, it might be like beat 1, right? And that'll
Yeah.
actually be like chapter 1 or something like that or whatever. So I think it's kind of the same idea here, is that it's like episode 3, but it's like arc 3.
Sure.
Or like in quotations arc, because I wouldn't argue these are full arcs, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like this is like the raid on the base, basically, kind of attack. So after whatever this is done, there's gonna be another type of event, so to speak. But I have really nothing else to say. It was pretty exciting to see these guys like kind of come down. It was exciting to like know like how he notices that these guys, the Wyvern types, usually are by themselves, and obviously they're not. We could see them from a visual standpoint, and they're like no pushovers either. I mean, no kaiju type is really a pushover, I would think, even like the monster creature type. That's why they have like a defense force, and I would assume like not many people join the defense unit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So because it's kind of like
You're putting your life on the line, you can die kind of thing.
you're like you're a first responder for sure.
Absolutely. The only the last thing that I just want to mention as well. Totally lost my train of thought here. 1 second, reading the last couple pages. Is I guess just further again this kind of idea that we're seeing like the kaiju. It's not just a behavioral thing, because just on the second last page, you've got the vice captain mentioning like the power that it would take to make these types of kaiju like put aside their pride and like band together and act with clear intelligence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just kind of always keeps bringing me back to these questions, like, are all of the humanoid kaijus, humans like Kafka originally, or are we going to see more of that, or are like, sorry,
we know for sure that Kaiju number 9 disguises himself as a human,
right?
but
But he
I
was
wouldn't
originally,
I wouldn't see, but that's just him for that instant. I wouldn't be surprised if this new guy 10 or whatever, Hornhead or whatever, he was like Kafka, a human, but then he just stayed as a kaiju, and now he's just more kaiju than human.
yeah, and then
Obviously,
evil.
I wouldn't be surprised that was a possibility. I mean, Kefla could turn into a kaiju. Why couldn't another human could, right? Like,
For sure.
why would he just be the only one? So unless there's some obviously explanations, but again, I mean, even the other examples of like the defense force uses like kaiju's like spinal thing to like boost up their attacks and then like endurance with their suits itself because of spinal stuff. So it's not out of the way.
For sure. Okay, so take it to 25 then, and we'll wrap up Kaiju catch up.
Nice.